Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in another video. Today, I'm joined by my colleague Petr, and today we'll be going over building an AVD environment. And the focus will be covering Python and as well as containers. To get started, if you're working with a network automation project, and in our case, AVD specifically, there are a few installation options. So to get started, we have Ansible CE or the Community Edition, sometimes also known as just Ansible Core. This is free to use, and within the AVD documentation, we do have installation instructions on how to get started, whether it's working with a virtual environment, requirements.txt files, or something like containers. Another option for leveraging AVD is the Ansible Automation Platform, right? So this is the official way if you want support when working within the Red Hat ecosystem. This is a little bit out of scope for this video, but those workflows are no different whether you're using the Ansible Community Edition or Ansible Automation Platform as far as from an AVD perspective. As well as mentioned in the slide, we also have an AAP guide. So if you want to leverage AVD with AAP, please take a look at that guide. We'll include the link in the show notes. And one that is interesting, so this is currently work in progress, and the plan is to release it either sometime this year, next year, but it's AVD Studios on CloudVision. This would be really interesting for folks that maybe want a quicker on ramp to get started with something like AVD and is frankly already using CloudVision, right? So imagine something pre-packaged, right? All of the AVD installations, all of the requirements already in your CloudVision instance. Therefore, it's not only speeding up your time to actually use AVD, but also taking the worry out of building an environment. Because as Petr and I will discuss, there's actually a process to building an environment, right? What versions do you have? Are there any requirements, additional requirements that need to be installed? Is it more than just myself working in an environment, right? Am I on a team with multiple people? Okay, then let's break out the discussion of, are we going to be leveraging something like Python? Are we going to be leveraging containers? Leveraging something like the AVD Studios will hopefully remove a lot of those bottlenecks and questions and the journey folks really have to get to just to get an environment started. And as we mentioned here on the right, as of AVD 4.9, PyAVD is really the foundation, not only the foundation, but it's also a legitimate requirement to get started with AVD. Right here in our example, we have a pip install PyAVD Ansible to install all of the Ansible requirements as well as PyAVD. But to be noted, PyAVD is not intended to be used directly. It's really the engine that drives AVD as a whole, but it's not necessarily built for direct use.
To add on what Julio just mentioned, there are actually some exceptions where you might want actually to use PyAVD, but honestly, they're like really, really rare, and you have to really know what you're doing. So, and probably at this point, you're either quite nerdy and don't need this video recording to understand how to build environment, or you're actually using some product supported by Arista professional services. So because we are not aiming at like our customers using PyAVD directly, and like Ansible provides a lot of value for inventory management. So which is not covered in PyAVD right now. So building the AVD environment is actually quite a complex task sometimes, and I want to go slightly back and just refer to what Julio already told, that once we have integration into CloudVision, that will be probably the easiest way for you to set up your environment. But right now we are mainly looking at the Ansible Community Edition, and that's basically the focus of our conversation today.
One thing else we should mention is building the inventory, and essentially these are our tips and tricks of working with an inventory. So one, you have to be structured, right? So another way to word that is have a plan, right? If you're going to build an inventory, one good tip, not only inventory, but also the environment. When you're going to building an environment, make sure you have some simple tests, right? This could be making sure that the packages are installed, making sure you can run specific commands, right? Maybe it's something like Ansible, right? Can I run the Ansible-Galaxy commands or the Ansible-inventory commands? Just to make sure like all of my packages can be found. I can run checks to make sure my inventory is working correctly. Now, speaking of inventory, and this is actually something I've done in the past as well, when making an inventory, and really with anything, my advice would be to keep it simple. And in this case, if you're building something like an AVD environment, start with a minimalist inventory. And in this case, let's say, we want to build a huge fabrics, a couple spines, and a whole bunch of leaves. That's all well and good, and that is like the end state we want to get to. But just as you're getting started, you're learning AVD, you're getting an environment ready, it's not a bad idea to just say, I have one or two spines. Maybe I have a pair of leaves. Maybe I have two pairs of leaves. Okay, then as you get the flow of building your environment, you have your AVD, all your group vars, your host vars, and then you run something like a build command. So keep that in mind when building out your inventory, right? It's not bad to start small and then grow as you feel comfortable. And realistically, once everything is in place, besides something like maybe where your nodes and what groups are associated to, the process is the same, right? It'll be a rinse repeat.
So to add on what Julia just said, actually, I think this slide is kind of important because I have seen so many people they have like limited time, right? So and therefore like people try to do like everything at once, right? So and the task becomes so complex that you cannot find anymore. So what is actually broken? So always try to move slow, understand every single step you're making, make it incremental, make it structured, and your life will become instantly easier. And when we are crafting the environment, so that becomes like super important. So because like environment has to be simple, and this is what actually we want to show in the conversation today. So this is one fundamental block that you have to build in a way that it's healthy to prevent future challenges.
This last bullet, I think, is actually exceptional and a good tip really to follow. There are a lot of repos out there for AVD, not only community repos, just folks out in the public on GitHub or other repositories. Some of them good, some of them not good, right? Some of these might be unofficial. Be mindful when you're cloning a repository. Look through the content, look through the group vars, the host vars. It might be an okay setup, but again, every setup is going to be unique for that person's specific goals. So either way, if you decide to clone a repository as a sort of a starting base, there will have to be some adjustments, and you do have to understand what is going on in that environment. And if you would like official repositories to get going or get started, we do have examples that you can get from our repository.
Yeah. And exactly this is where honestly part of the change comes from. So because people always often use examples, AVD examples, they're really convenient, and this is totally fine. But I would suggest you, if you can, maybe better rebuild your environment from the scratch than just simply use it blindly. So because there may be some knobs in examples that will not necessarily play well in the real environment. So they are fine for the lab environment, but you have to adjust them slightly to make your environment work.
This is a quick overview of what is required when you're building an AVD repository. For the moment and for this video, we'll be really specifically covering the environment and the Ansible config file. Those are what's in scope for this section, but be mindful that, yes, we do need other things. For example, the inventory, the variables, the playbooks, so on and so forth. No different than what you've seen in a bunch of other videos that Petr and I have made.
When you build the environment, it's very important to keep it clean. And apart from being structured, please never use any handcrafted environment that has some, some legacy, some previous secret life that you know nothing about. It will break, and it will certainly break. Yeah, so because there can be so many exceptions on the machines that had like a long lifetime and that were used for some other things, that it's simply not possible to predict what actually will break AVD playbook. And the funny part is that like you can troubleshoot that, right? So definitely, so you can find the reason why it's breaking, but then you will regret the time wasted. So because this knowledge actually gives you, nothing. I mean, okay, maybe if you actually learn something, at least that's good, right? So, but if you already know that, okay, this has to be set correctly, yeah, you found it, so, and you just set it correctly, but you can avoid that altogether, but, setting up your environment on a clean, healthy machine. So please always have some clean, predictable environment. The other thing is, I mean, it's literally everywhere. So I'm not opening any secrets here, but please never ever use root account. I mean, many people work with root, and like you think, okay, in the lab it's fine to work with root. I can assure you that even in the lab it's not always fine to work with root. Yeah, so and it's not about security or anything like that, but like you're breaking permissions of your files that then actually become hard to fix, especially in certain cases like when you use containers or anything. And this is again a lot of regrets because you can just use like normal non-root user and your life is instantly easier. So because this is the way how things supposed to work. Now, what are the feasible options to get your clean environment? First of all, you can simply have like a nice and well-maintained virtual machine, right? And as long as the setup of this machine is clean and predictable, things will work. There are two caveats with that. So, okay, first of all, and this is really hard to, to get rid of this completely. Sometimes, the machine can be maintained by a different team, and you never know what actually this team configured on the machine. I had a case when the memory on the machine was tweaked, and it was so fancy to troubleshoot. So, because basically the AVD environment was constantly running out of memory. And there was nothing wrong with AVD. It's just basically the machine memory was configured in a way that is, it was always trying to buffer something and running out of memory, even though there was plenty of it, right? Now, and the other thing is, so when machines exist for quite some time, so you might want to rebuild it, right? So, but usually it's a bit harder to rebuild a virtual machine than actually something like a container, for example. Yeah, therefore, if you can go like the second or third option, like virtual environment or basically containers, I think is basically a better solution. Well, virtual environment, I think it's a great way to create an isolated environment. So there are certain challenges with this that I'm going to cover later. But at least when you are starting to experiment with your deployment and so on, I think it's a great way to set up things quickly. It might be not fully isolated from what is happening on your machine, but it's isolated well enough to overcome most troubles you can actually face. And then containers. Well, we actually have like even AVD container images published. So with every release, they're in preview. But you can also build your own containers, and I think containers is a great way to build, clean and predictable environments. So if you go Ansible Automation Platform way, most likely you will also use containers. So like special kind, which is called Ansible Execution Environment. But this is basically not much different from what we propose for Community Edition. So it's still a container that you craft to actually build a predictable environment. So on your Ansible AP platform. Okay, Ansible AP platform might be out of scope because, as I said, this is Red Hat product, and normally people do use it because they're actually looking for Red Hat support. So we are focusing on Community Edition. Now, again, I think out of these two, I would probably focus on virtual environments and containers really. If we compare them, there are some positive and negative things about them. The benefit of virtual environments, and by the way, Julio had recorded a great video recording explaining how to use a virtual environment to set up AVD. So the link will be in the description. So please take a look at that. They're simple, they're lightweight. You don't have to bring any special tools in the loop. So because basically you need just Python interpreter, right? So and they're quite efficient in setting up your environment in an isolated way. However, I mean, compared to container option, I think it actually breaks more often than containers. So because basically they have less isolation from your environment, and yet I think troubleshooting what you will see is not like super complicated. So it's an average kind of troubleshooting. You can normally find what is broken. So it can break in multiple ways, right? So you can have multiple Python interpreters. You can have like incorrect requirements installed, broken paths, like Ansible CFG, some tweaks, and most importantly, like people tend to put some paths to Ansible collection instead of absolute paths. They use actually relative paths, and this looks like really crazy because you open a repository and you don't know like where the collection is located and why it's there. So it's absolutely not clear. Well, that shouldn't scare you. So because when I'm talking about these challenges, it means yeah, you can break virtual environment, right? So, but it's still normally, if you set it up correctly and it's healthy, it's an isolated environment. So just craft it smartly and it will be instantly better than some machine with a legacy life, right? Now, containers, I think, is one of the best ways to isolate what is happening inside the environment from the rest of your machine. They're stable, they're portable, they have really high level of isolation. I'm talking about AVDs, so because sometimes like container can break because you have some kernel issues and so on. But that's for really complicated cases. Like, the AVD case is usually quite simple. And if you set up your like Docker or Podman or whatever in the right way, so running containers is not a challenge and it will probably never break. However, if it will break, the troubleshooting complexity can be high, right? So, and you need certain skills to understand what is happening. You have to be ready for that. Probably the king of all the troubles is when people are running into permission issues. So this is by far the biggest thing. We're not focused on discussing, containerization here as such. So, but basically, like what you have to understand when you're running the containers, that if you're touching files inside AVD environment that are basically mounted to allocation on your virtual machine or something, you should have normally like it depends on the operating system, but you normally should have a matching user ID. Yeah, so you have to do some work to be sure that this will be the case. So because if the user ID is not matching, like an operating system like Ubuntu or there are some like Red Hat Enterprise Linux that are even stricter, will simply refuse to do anything and tell you you don't have permissions. Yeah, so this is logical. So there is a document, and you can find the link in the description. So explaining some of that. So look at this document if you ever had similar troubles, and maybe you will understand why it's happening.
One thing I should note, I know we say virtual environments versus containers, and from our own perspective, like I tend to use virtual environments a lot more, and Petr tends to be more of a fan of containers. So we like both approaches. There are pros and cons to both approaches. If you're comfortable with virtual environments and it works for you, that's great. If you've always worked with containers and that's your path, that will work too. One thing though, from my experience, I will say is that virtual environments are great when you need an environment to get started, obviously, but when you start to expand, or maybe you're working with other team members, or maybe contributing to other projects, naturally to ensure the environment is, the same one I'm using, the same Python versions, containers do tend to be a little bit easier, in my opinion, to share that between individuals, right? You can share the requirements.txt file, that's great, but folks tend to have different versions of Python installed, and that could have different ramifications that you might not have planned for just when you pass along something like a requirements.txt file. So that could have breaking changes in itself.
Yeah. And you actually see quite some container stuff in this video recording. Um, if you want actually to watch how to create virtual environment, as I said, watch the recording from Julio. So, but this is not because we want actually to defend any single way of crafting this environment. I actually want to show you how the healthy environment is supposed to look like. Yeah, and this is the whole idea of this. Of this video recording, so just to show what is basically the healthy environment, and where things can break and how you can prevent that. Now the other, like, talking about containers, I want to mention one more thing because I see it more often lately. In some enterprise environment, people do use Red Hat products, so which they produce great product, and I think like Podman is an amazing tool. I'm actually using Podman myself. Okay, I'm using Podman desktop, so which is maybe not directly comparing with the way people run Podman in production. So because normally what they do run actually rootless Podman on a Red Hat Enterprise Linux or something. I have seen actually people running that on Rocky Linux. And then there is a C Linux enabled. And the caveat here is that it's not like that it's super complex, but you need some learning curve to basically understand what rootless Podman is doing and how that actually works with SE Linux. And then people try to start container in the same way they do it with rootful Docker, and this fails. Yeah, so maybe, I mean, at some point we will also produce some documentation or even like video recordings on that. Yeah, if you actually step into troubles, ideally talk to a Linux expert in your company. Well, if you don't have such an expert, you can definitely try to talk to Arista SC. So, but honestly, Arista SC is also not supposed to be an expert on SC Linux, right? So it can become quite challenging in situations like that. You can still make it work. Let's say I want to uh, start and clean and simple environment really quick. And probably by far the easiest case is just to pull a container that we are building with every release and run it in your CLI, just like to get a bit familiar, so and to have actually some fun with AVD examples, for example. I mean, this is not something I advocate for production use cases, and I want to remind once again that AVD container images are in preview right now. But what it means, it doesn't mean they are like not working. They're fully capable of creating a clean environment for you. It's just we can actually make changes without informing anyone, and like significant changes, breaking changes. The breaking changes are probably irrelevant in this case because if you don't want them, you simply actually stay on the old containers, right? So, but you have to be aware so that they are in preview. You can still use these container images as a reference, and I just want to show you that if you want to craft your own container image, yeah, so you go to avd.arista.com, you click on GitHub, and basically you can see the images here, right? So if I open Universal, the Universal is probably the image that you need, which has a full AVD environment for you. But again, so if you want to craft your own environment that will be fully supported by your own team, that will be, maybe scanned for any security vulnerabilities, you go here, you open actually the container definitions, and you will figure out how to build one if you have some experience. So let's actually let's give it a try. Yeah. So as you can see, there are just few steps I'm proposing to make here. We are just setting up the alias to pull the container and run it. Yeah. And then we run this alias. The container will start. We will unpack, the AVD examples, and we'll give it a try. We just simply run some playbook. So let me switch to my terminal. So the very first thing I'm going to set up is the alias. It's just one liner. So here what I'm doing, I'm basically adding Docker run and I'm using like the AVD container image. So with some mounts, so because apparently I need actually some mounts here, so to run the stuff. And I'm putting that to my Z shell resource file. So once I have that, I can basically run AVD, and I will be pulling the container image. Okay, as you can see, we just pulled the image. So, and apparently we are sitting inside the container environment. If I do Ansible Galaxy collection list, you can see that I have AVD installed. Okay, basically there is a bit of a glitch, so because it's 5.2.3 and not 5.5.1, so this is because I forgot to refresh my terminal window, which is irrelevant, so we can actually leave this version. And basically the idea is that with every single AVD installation, we do supply AVD examples. Yeah, so if I go to, let me just show that to you. I go to home AVD, and this is basically like the home path for the user on this machine. Let me just show you quickly. If I do home, who am I, you will see that I'm user AVD inside AVD container, and basically home AVD is the home folder. So then I do like .ansible collections, Ansible collections, Arista, AVD examples, right? So you can see there is number of examples here. Okay, first of all, these locations looks complex, but actually if you take a look at Ansible Galaxy collection list, you will see exactly the same location in there. This is honestly the default Ansible install location. And when you basically have a clean environment and you have Ansible installation on your machine, you should have more or less the same path. So you might not be running that in AVD container, and the user might be different, but basically this is home folder, and then .ansible collections. Everything should be there. If you have a different location for your Ansible collections, please make sure you do understand how that happened and what's actually the point of that. So one benefit of having default path, you don't have to configure that. So anywhere in your Ansible CFG, and I will show that later, because Ansible will instantly pick the default location without you specifying that. And it might be looking like a small thing, but actually it's a huge step in making your environment healthy. Now, what I want to do, I want to basically extract one, example, and I do CPR, R for recursive. Then I will copy paste this, and let's say I want like single DCL3LS star, and I put dots because I just want to put that all into my container workspace. So if I do ls right now, you can see that I have some stuff there. I have my group vars, I have playbooks, all this kind of stuff, and I can do Ansible-Galaxy, Ansible playbook, and I just can run build YAML, right? So, and I will instantly see that AVD is building configurations for me. So this is one of the easiest way you can actually set up the AVD environment really quick, and one of the easiest ways to start, playing with AVD as such. And I think it's also a great demo if you want to show like your colleague or someone. So okay, look, this is AVD, this is how we're working. So you just set up one liner ls and you just get the entire environment instantly. Yeah. Now, once you're done with that, apparently you can exit, right? And I have to type full command, and then you are outside of the container. And you can use like RM if you want to have a clean installation. So because this alias basically creates a volume that makes the data on your machine persistent. We are not mounting anything to avoid any permission issues or something. We want to keep things clean. Now, Now, if you want actually to do something more sophisticated, right? Imagine you now want to start crafting your own inventory. And for that, you want to open that in VS Code and start creating some stuff. Again, so the quickest way to start is basically you just create some directory, so with .dev container inside, and you put dev container definition in the dev container JSON, so which will refer basically the same container image I was just talking about, and then it will basically mount your actually local files to the workspace, and you can start playing with them. So let's try to do that quickly. I mean, really, if you have a bit of like shell experience, it's not hard to understand what's happening here. I just copy paste it. I move to my terminal. I'm in my home folder, and I just actually do that. So, and you see this code dot command, so which instantly opens VS Code for me, and then it asks, okay, reopen in container. I mean, I will skip it for now, so because I want to show you that if you don't have code dot, right? So you go here, command palette, you can find out how to call it from VS Code shortcuts. And you type pass, and you can see there is a command here, which is shell command install code in the pass, and it will be instantly there. And you can do the same thing that I have done in my terminal. Otherwise, you can actually go all the way through. You can basically open this folder manually. Now, as you can see, after some timeout, the reopen this container is gone. Yeah, so and I have to click my hotkey, which is Command-Shift-P on Mac, and type like reopen. You see, rebuild and reopen in containers. So to start it manually. So once I do that, so the VS Code is doing a lot of fancy stuff for me. And why I think this is one of the easiest way to start things, because like VS Code is really super fancy. It's doing like user ID remapping and everything. So when you need that, so, and you can see, okay, the image was actually in the cache. It took a bit less time to start it, right? But essentially it's up and running literally in seconds. I will close all this stuff and I will actually open the terminal. And you can see that what is happening right now, so because we are basically referring to kind of the same container here, so we already have an example unpacked, and we can actually start playing with it. And if I do like Ansible dash Galaxy. So as you can see, when I'm looking at Ansible Galaxy collection list, so I see that Ansible AVD is already installed, and you can also see that all the files are present because we are actually mounting the same volume that we actually have created before, and basically we can run the playbook and see that it's all perfectly working. Ansible playbook, build.yaml, and you can see that we are running AVD and basically building the stuff, right? So this is how it works. I mean, if you want to go further, so what you actually then have to do, you probably start, changing the stuff a bit. So you go out of your container environment, reopen folder locally, and then let's say you are now sitting in basically your AVD playground locations that you have created before. So you go to dev container definition, and what you basically do, you kill, this command, you kill these commands, and you basically kill this command. So it becomes like instantly simpler. So this is basically the minimal dev container configuration you need to run the stuff on your machine. So with that, you rebuild and reopen stuff in container, but now you are supposed to open your basically local directory as a container workspace. And you can see it's basically absolutely empty right now. So, but from now on, you can start crafting your own repository. And if you do like Ansible-Galaxy collection list, you can see that it's still, the same Ansible environment that will be absolutely functional as long as you have the right inventory deployed on your machine. So again, this is just a quick way to give you some ideas so how you can actually spin a healthy environment quickly. But honestly, it's way more important to understand what are the criteria that actually make your environment healthy. And one important criteria for me is actually your Ansible CFG. So because honestly, I have seen so many environments with Ansible CFG that has like 10 or 20 lines, and not all of them are there for purpose. I mean, really, all you need to start working with the stuff is just 2 lines. And basically, these 2 lines are, okay, you have to refer to location of your inventory because you probably don't want to specify that manually for every playbook. And you need some Jinja 2 extensions for AVD to work. That's it. I mean, your collection path should be default path, and everything else ideally should be default. Sometimes you might have a good reason to tweak Ansible CFG further, but again, understand why some knobs are there. So because like literally to have a functional and clean environments, 2 lines are sufficient. And 2 lines is a good indicator that your environment is simple, that your environment is healthy. So because if it works with these 2 lines, that means, your path is default and so on. So now, well, sometimes things can be more complicated. Yeah. So, and I have just prepared a small cheat sheet that you can use to understand what can be wrong in your environment. So when it's misbehaving. We aren't going to do any troubleshooting here. I think it's kind of hard to show things in artificial session that can actually happen in field. But nevertheless, we just go through some of these commands and we show how they will look like in a healthy environment and why they are important. So for that, I have this slide, and as you can see, it's a bit fancy. So because I'm presenting my slide deck, and I have like VS Code window directly inside. Now, the point is to show that, first of all, when you are troubleshooting your environment and you are trying to understand what went wrong, so the very first thing is probably to check the PyAVD installation. And to check the PyAVD installation, so basically what you have to do, you have to type this command, right? And you will instantly get the version of PyAVD that is up and running. Now you can see that my case looks a bit fancy. So because normally if you do actually pip freeze without any grabs, you can see that for most libraries we really have a version specified. Yeah. So but for this one we actually don't have it. This is because inside AVD container image we simply install this library from Git, but you will see something different. So okay, if you are running AVD container image, it's enough for you to simply check AVD container image. You don't need anything else that is specified on this slide. Yeah. But if you have your custom environment, so double check what PyAVD version are you using. The other thing is if I basically do print env and I do grep Ansible, you can see that I have an environment variable Ansible config set to ansible.cfg, which is then in return actually is in my inventory basically. So why that is important sometimes? So because if you have some local installation, probably it's irrelevant. But the thing is that in container world, and it's often the case also when you run AVD in CI pipeline, Ansible is not happy as it has some security concerns. And these security concerns, if I go back to the previous slide, are related to this world writable directory error. And this error means that Ansible thinks that it has too many permissions on the drive. This is probably totally fine for your CI environments, but it's not fine for Ansible. So, and to force it to find Ansible CFG in such environment, so we can set this environment variable. So I have seen that a couple of times, so that's why I actually mentioned that. Then, of course, what you want to check is Ansible -- version. Make sure it's correct. Make sure you're not using Ansible 2.19 as of now. Maybe if you're watching this like half a year later after the recording date, it's fine. But as of now, 2.19 has a lot of breaking changes, so we don't support it in AVD yet. It will take some time to add everything that is required to support 2.19. But basically, well, this has to be correct and this has to be in sync with PyAVD requirements, right? So normally, the way how you install Ansible core, you install it as PyAVD requirement, and there is a specific version, that is specified in these requirements. So then once you know all that and you think it's healthy, the other thing you probably want to do is Ansible Galaxy collection list. And this is quite useful command, so because it will first of all show you the location where all the collection are installed, and you will see all the versions and everything. Make sure they're healthy, make sure that anything that you need is basically there, right? Well, that's kind of basics checks, but then things can go a bit fancier. So because sometimes, okay, you think you're using the right Ansible when you're running Ansible Galaxy Collection List, but maybe not. Maybe you have like multiple installations for some reasons. That actually can happen on certain machines. And in this case, you can do like which Ansible, and you can really take a look what Ansible binary are you basically using, right? So not for basic troubleshooting cases, but sometimes it actually comes to that. And as you can see, in a healthy environment, I'm pointing to default Ansible installation path, and that should be basically home directory. If I like echo home, you can see that home AVD is my home directory, and that .local bin Ansible is basically the location where I would expect it to be. Now, then, okay, we have done pip freeze before, but I mean, pip freeze, sometimes it's not the same as pip3 freeze. And I have to type it correctly. So because basically you can have pip, which is maybe you still have Python 2 on your machine for whatever reason, or I don't know. And then pip3 is basically pointing to Python 3 libraries, and sometimes it's not the same. Sometimes it's actually very different requirements installed. I have seen a lot, and normally it's even fancier. So because you basically have multiple Python 3 interpreters on one single machine, and then you think you are using the right Python version on your for your AVD to run things, but it's not the case, and it breaks because for another Python interpreter that you're actually using, the required libraries are not installed, or maybe this Python is not supported anymore. So like basically when you're running AVD, so the minimum supported version expected to be right now Python 3.10, And if you have Python 3.9, so it's too old. So you should be using Python 3.10 or later. So watch out that. And then, like if you have multiple Python interpreters, you actually have to check that in even fancier ways. So basically what you do, you type like Python 3.11 dash m pip, and then actually you do freeze. And then you finally know what are requirements you are basically using. So this is kind of stuff you have to go sometimes when you are building your own environments. Yeah. Well, of course, you might want to check pip version itself with. This is rarely necessary, but sometimes it's actually good to check. And then, as you can see, I haven't specified pip3 or something, but I instantly see that this is basically pip for 3.11. The good thing on in my container environment that I have like literally one single interpreter configured for everything, and this is so important. So because like if you have multiple, it makes that instantly much harder to control. But let's see. Maybe I'm not certain. Like I think I know my interpreter, so but I want to double check if this interpreter is really using like the right Ansible basically. And this is a command that you can basically use it to check that. And as you can see, I'm using my default Python 3, whatever that is. In my case, it's Python 3.11. And if I go actually this way, so basically I can see that, okay, this is like really how I will be calling Ansible on my system, right? Then you might want to check, and I was talking about this before, so what is the real version of your Python, basically? So if you do Python 3 dash dash version, you will see that it's Python 3.11.12. Sometimes you have to be more specific. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. So, but you can see this is like this interpreter is not present on my system. But if I would have it, actually this command would work like, that. Yeah. So basically, knowing your Python interpreters and how many you have is super important when you build an environment. And then, of course, you always use which to basically find the corresponding binaries. Python, you see, this is the location. It's hard to understand what kind of Python is that. As I said, we could actually use versions, but we can also do something like this. So, and actually get the same thing. And then we also double check that we have basically the right location for Python 3 and, check what kind of Python 3 is that, or like even for specific version of Python 3. Yeah, so you have to understand like where are the binaries located if you have too many of them. And one great command that you can actually use to find out things quickly is basically this one. I have Python 3.11 and I just want to find all the system files related to this interpreter. So I just enter this command, and as you can see, instantly I can see like, okay, the Python location, and I can instantly see like where, for example, the packages for this Python interpreter are sitting. And really, I had privilege to troubleshoot all that for the real use cases. So because, as I said, sometimes things can go complex when you're handcrafting, and all this is spread across different Python interpreters, and then the libraries are installed in different location. And that's why I'm saying, like, keep that under control, keep the environment simple, and your life will be easier. And then actually we have like a few final commands. Well, if you are sitting in container environment, you have troubles. Always check basically who am I, check the user. It should be non-root. But what's more important is IDU and IDG. And they normally have to match the IDs that are outside of your container environment, because otherwise you will get permission errors. With some exceptions. So because if you run it on macOS or something like that, so this is less relevant. and the tool like Podman Desktop will take care of privilege mapping for you, or maybe Docker Desktop or what you're running. But if you're running that on a native Linux machine, normally it has to be matching. And the very last thing I want to show here is basically if I do echo pass, just make sure that you have all the binaries in your pass environment variable, so otherwise you might not be able to call them correctly. So, well, let's say your environment is healthy, but you still cannot do anything. You're trying to pass configs to your devices and it actually breaks during the playbook execution. So what you can do in this case, you can try to use a famous tool, which is called curl, and you can specify the user, which will be, let's say, Arista. Arista, this is the user that is configured on my lab. I will use like data, and I will put like show version. I want to run this simple command on the remote location. I will make insecure because I'm not troubleshooting certificates right now and I want them to be accepted in any case. And then I put HTTPS. Then I put DNS name of my switch. And in my case, it's basically L01 column 443 slash command dash API dash dash verbose. And you can see that I have successful connection, right? So because eAPI is enabled on my devices, right? So this command was executed and it even gives me the version that I'm running, which is 4.34.2. Now, if that is not working, there is no point to troubleshoot AVD environment. So because maybe you have something really basic preventing curl to work. And the reasons can be different. Maybe you have like issues with proxy. Maybe there is like firewall in the middle. It can be literally anything. So, but be aware of this actually check because it's really helpful. And I mean, if your environment is healthy, we have done all these checks. We know that our environment is fine. We can build the configs. So it's supposed to work in a healthy environment. So as you can see, I have generated the configs and I can open one of them and you can see there is a config generated, right? And if I do actually make deploy, this is supposed to be correctly deployed to my switches. So as you can see, basically this is just a couple of checks you can actually run if you're building your environments and how you can understand if it's healthy or not. So one reason I like actually containers, so because I can give that as a reference to people. This is basically how you do it the right way, and then you do whatever you feel is necessary, but you always have a reference in front of your eyes. So this is the main message of this TOI. And with that, I just want to show some credits and attributions. So because we're using some tools to power this demo and build the slides and everything. And that's it, right? So this is everything that we wanted to tell you today. Thank you for listening.
No, Petr, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, especially around containers. I mean, incredibly useful to build environments, not only for AVD, but also really any network automation project. So thank you.
Thank you, Julio.